Today we're exploring a Sportsnet article which is talking about the possibility of a huge trade between the Maple Leafs and the Coyotes, making a recommendation to make the Leafs a better team to go for the Stanley Cup. So we're going to explore that trade, see what we think of it, and see what everybody else watching thinks as well. We also have some updates from the NHL playoffs, some signings, news out of Detroit on Dylan Larkin, plus we have a major lawsuit facing Hockey Canada and several players from the 2018 World Junior Team. We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of NHL news and some trade talk to look at here today. First up, a few updates from the playoffs last night. We saw an amazing game between the Blues and the Avalanche. Early on, it looked like the Avs were in control. Nathan MacKinnon was a man on a mission, scoring his first 2 goals of the game early on. Landeskog added a third. It was 3-0. Everything was going the way of the Avalanche, and it was looking like the Blues season might come to an end, but they battled all the way back, tied the game 3-3, and then we saw probably the most amazing goal of the playoffs. Nathan MacKinnon on a one-man show going end-to-end with an amazing goal. The whole building just exploded. They retook that lead back 4-3, and again, with not a lot of time left, it looked like the Avalanche were going to wrap things up. But the Blues would just not go away. Robert Thomas, with the second of the game, scores late to tie it up yet again, 4-4, and send this game to overtime, where Tyler Bozak, early on in the first overtime period, scored the game-winning goal. Certainly, it was an exciting game. I know from the Avs perspective, and the Avs fans are probably disappointed with the 3-0 collapse. 3-0, as we say, is the worst lead in hockey. But, you know, it was a heck of an entertainment game. So I'll give it that. Nathan MacKinnon was absolutely amazing. I know a lot of people are saying they want to see MacKinnon against McDavid in the Western Final, and I certainly agree that would be an amazing showdown that I would love to see as well. But the Blues have a lot to say about that before that happens. And of course, the Oilers and Flames are going at it here tonight as well to kind of see if the Oilers can wrap up that series. So the Flames are now facing elimination down 3-1. So we'll see if McDavid and Edmonton can finish them off. And then the Canes and Rangers are battling 2-2 as we speak. As the video goes up on YouTube, that game's already underway. Carolina at home, that's where they always win. Can they keep it up, or can the Rangers change that streak? Now, as I mentioned, we have a couple of signings today as well. The Vancouver Canucks have signed a prospect here that's had a real good year, and somebody they've been waiting on for a little while. That's Linus Karlsson, who's 22 years old, center iceman. He was a 2018 draft pick from the 3rd round. He was not drafted by the Canucks, though. He was drafted by the Sharks, but they acquired him in a trade for Jonathan Dahlen a while back. So Karlsson had a real solid year in the SHL, putting up 46 points in 52 games, and just recently competed here in the World Championships with Team Sweden, who unfortunately was eliminated today in the quarterfinals by Team Canada after an epic comeback in that game as well. The Swedes had a 3-0 lead, and Canada came back late to tie and then win in overtime. So he gets his contract. He's excited to join the Canucks and see if he can make the roster next year. So we'll see. But he looks like a real promising prospect. The New York Islanders have signed a prospect as well from the 2018 draft. Obviously, they wouldn't have had a ton of time left to get him under contract, but Russian center Ruslan Ishakov, second-round pick for 2018, gets his contract in place. He's a smaller center iceman, 5'7", but 152, but he is pretty solid and has put up some real good offensive numbers in his young career. He played a couple of years of U.S. college hockey at the University of Connecticut, and then in the past 2 years, he's played in Liga, and then he went to the DEL in Germany for 21-22 and played for Adler Mannheim and had himself a pretty good season by the looks of things. So another interesting prospect there for the Isles. Now, speaking of contracts, we talked yesterday about the possibility that Canucks forward Alex Chiasson might be heading to Switzerland. Today, there was statements from his agent denying those reports, saying that it's Alex's intent to remain in the NHL, and his first priority, preferably, would be to re-sign with Vancouver if that's possible. If that doesn't work out, they will seek contracts from other NHL teams, and there's no deal on the table for him to head to Switzerland at this time. So we'll see exactly where he ends up. I'm not convinced he stays in Vancouver, but they will attempt to get him an NHL contract somewhere, and I'm not sure what his options will be. I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't work out. Maybe they explore Switzerland as a backup option, but we'll see on that. Now, there was also news today in Detroit regarding Captain Dylan Larkin, somewhat surprising to a degree. We do see this from time to time, but we saw the announcement today that Dylan Larkin has changed agents. He's no longer under KO Sports, run by Kurt Overhart. Kurt Overhart and his partner, Joe Oliver, have been representing Larkin for an entire career so far, even dating back before that. So I believe they've worked together for 10, 11 years. He's now switched to CAA under Pat Brisson. Of course, Brisson is the biggest agent in hockey with the largest book of contracts by far, and seems to get all the biggest deals, or for the most part at least. So certainly, Larkin is eligible for an extension this summer. He's on the 4th year of a 5-year, $6 million per year deal. So, I have to think that he was obviously getting to the point where he was concerned over his next contract and thought they could get him a better contract, perhaps. I don't know. I know KO Sports and Overhart put out a statement today indicating that they worked with Larkin a long time, had a great relationship. He said that he primarily worked with his partner, Joe Oliver, and that they had already had some discussions and preparations regarding his next contract, and they already, were starting to do the prep work to be ready for negotiations, and that they were really disappointed with the timing of this, considering how close they are to being eligible to negotiate an extension. So I don't know the reasons, of course, behind it. We didn't get any statements from Larkin, just the statement put out by Overhart and KO Sports. But we do see this from time to time, and it's generally players that are going to be needing a contract here real soon and seem to be confident that the agent they're switching to can get them a better deal. And it seems like a lot of times it's them switching to Brisson. Pat Brisson, like I said, seems to be getting most of the biggest business around the NHL. Now, in some more troubling news, you could say, I learned today through the news that there is a lawsuit against Hockey Canada and several former World Junior players. Now, essentially, the news here broke, I guess it's been the last couple of days. I only heard of this today myself, but there was a lawsuit pending against Hockey Canada and 8 members of the 2018 World Junior Hockey Canada team. Now, of course, the players are not named, so we do not know who they are, because at the time, I guess they would have been due to their age, likely. They're considered John Does 1 through 8 in the lawsuit. Essentially, it's a young girl who says that she had a situation where Hockey Canada was honoring the gold medal winning team. This was after the tournament, so of course they won the tournament in January. Later that summer, there was an event in London, Ontario, to honor this team. And later after the event, she went out to a bar. She meets a hockey player. And then from there, now the player that she first met and was talking to was not one of the players named, apparently. He introduces her to several of his teammates. One of the teammates she seems to kind of connect with more than the others by the sounds of things. Goes back to the hotel and things happen. That part, from what I can understand from the reports, seemed to be consensual, but then after that, she's accusing them of saying that he invited the rest of the other 7 teammates into the room without her permission, without her consent, and essentially she was assaulted sexually. So this lawsuit was presented, and then I see news today from Rick Westhead and TSN that the lawsuit is being dropped and that they're settling out of court. So that certainly makes it sound like they must have had some pretty good evidence to suggest that they had, that this happened, that it, it's not her lying by any means, and that if they're settling out of court, I don't know, it just doesn't look good, right? You have to think there's some guilt there to some degree. So we don't know who those players are. Apparently there was no response, I believe, from the players in the lawsuit. But now the NHL obviously is aware of all this. So a lot of those players from Canada's World Junior team in 2018 are in the NHL, like that team. Sometimes you see a small percentage. So that group, though, has a lot of them in the NHL and some decent, good profile players at that. So we don't know who was all involved. Obviously, that 2018 World Junior team, I'm not going to get into all the names here, but you can certainly Google and get the roster. There's a lot of players that are having themselves a good start to their career. They're also relatively young. But anyways, the NHL put this statement out, which I'll show you, essentially saying that they're aware of the lawsuit. that obviously the behavior is reprehensible and that they're going to be investigating the statement of claim, trying to get to the underlying facts here and determine what, if any, consequences should be made for these said players. Now, obviously, I don't know. I guess they're going to do their own internal investigation based on what they can be presented with to see if they think anything should happen. Where it hasn't been proven in court, it's going to be up to the NHL's discretion, I guess, to kind of come to their own conclusions based on whatever information is available and presented to them, I would assume here. So I'm sure that there's a lot of very nervous hockey players right now waiting to see what comes from this, and it's certainly not a good look at all, and something that you don't want to hear about. But unfortunately, we keep hearing, every once in a while here of these really unfortunate incidents that shouldn't be happening within not just hockey but sports in general. These things should just not happen ever to anybody, sports or otherwise, anywheres. And it's just really troubling how people think these things are okay. It's mind-blowing. So I guess we'll wait to see if we learn any more information about who these players might be, or if there will be any said consequences that any of them will end up dealing with. So stay tuned for further updates once we learn more after the NHL completes its own internal investigation. Now, as I mentioned, the hot topic for today that we want to talk about, there's an article in Sportsnet published a few days back that I wanted to have a time to talk about here today. So again, this is a trade proposal. The author of this article in Sportsnet is a former NHL scout. So they're essentially reviewing the Leafs season and how it ended and their opinion on how it should be made better. So again, like I've been saying in any of these videos recently that have trade proposals, these are not rumors per se to suggest that these teams are discussing this trade. This is just an author's opinion on a trade that they feel will make the Leafs better. Of course, as we know, the Leafs are one of the hugest fan bases around Canada and around the world, and obviously there's lots to talk about after their 6th consecutive year of losing in the first round. So again, if you don't like this trade, I don't want to hear any comments about me personally. This is not my idea. Take it out on Sportsnet if you don't like it, or better yet, just be mature and leave your comments and say whether or not you think the trade should happen or not. And if you don't like it, propose one that you think is better, and we can talk about it, because that's what we do here, is we love to talk about these types of scenarios just to see what the community thinks. So here is the trade proposal. It's a huge trade involving the Leafs and the Arizona Coyotes. So the Toronto Maple Leafs would send forward William Nylander, who's 26 years old, has 2 years left on his contract at $6.9 million, along with young defenseman Timothy Liljegren, who's currently a restricted free agent, needs a new deal, likely going to get a contract somewhere around the $2 million mark on a short-term, either 1, 2, or 3-year contract, as well as their 2024 first-round pick. Now, in return, the Arizona Coyotes would send one of the top young defensemen in the NHL, 24-year-old Jakob Chychrun, who's a left shot but plays both sides of the ice. He's a left and right shot defenseman, so either way is fine. He's got 3 years on his deal at 4.6, and many consider that contract to be a steal for what you can get from Chychrun between the offense as well as the physical play. It also includes current young forward who's an RFA, Lawson Crouse, who's a very physical power forward style guy who had a breakout year, scoring the most career high in goals this past year, as well as a 2024 third round pick. So that is 3 pieces going in either direction. Now, essentially, if you think about it here, let's say that we take the 2 RFA players here, Liljegren for Crouse. Some would argue that might even be a 1-for-1 trade if you wanted to do it separately. Timothy Liljegren is a first round pick defenseman who's a right shot, who's developing and emerging as a good young player in the league. Lawson Crouse is emerging as a potential, consistent top 6 forward who can score and play a power forward kind of game. I don't know if it'd be exactly 1-for-1, but if you look at both where they were drafted and expectations and things like that, they might be able to cancel each other out, or at least it's close. Hard to say. Then you got Nylander in a first for Chychrun in the third. If you break it down and simplify it and think of it that way, now I know there might be Leaf fans out there not maybe as familiar with Jakob Chychrun and as much as he should be to really comment properly on this trade. But there is an argument in this article, and I wouldn't completely disagree with it here, that if Jakob Chychrun was traded to the Leafs, he would instantly become their top defenseman. You can make an argument that he can provide around the same amount of offense or close to it when he's healthy as Riley, but give you more of the physicality and the other intangibles. So, not to say, I'm not saying and convinced that he's better than Riley, but the article makes a point that he could be easily your number 1 or number 2 defenseman. Number 2 for sure. I think that's easy to say based on what he brings the full package to the table. And he's 24, so he's younger than Nylander. And the other thing about this as well, as I think about it, is it saves you some money. So you get a different mix here. Now, Lawson Crouse may not give you that same kind of production as William Nylander, but I will say this. If you look at what they got in Michael Bunting, who can play with Matthews and Marner, look what he did this year and the numbers that he put up. He can play with those guys. And if a guy like Crouse can come in and play with John Tavares and do a similar type of thing, then that obviously changes things up a little bit there too, right? So certainly the Leafs could go with a slightly different lineup next year. But obviously, Crouse could be that guy. Now, I'm not saying, right now I'm not giving my opinion here just yet, but at the end of the day, Crouse could be one of those value players that you find, like Bunting, who can come in, play a top 6 role, and certainly exceed expectations. I do think it's possible. He's a real big physical kid who can score. Now, he could also turn out to be Nick Ritchie 2.0, right? Look at what happened in that scenario. Nick Ritchie came into Toronto on a free agent contract. He's also a big kid who at times has shown he can score, and he flopped in Toronto. Goes down to Arizona, though, where he is now, and he actually played much better and scored. So I don't know what the problem was, but it didn't work in Toronto for him. And I'm not saying Crouse would be the same, but there's also that degree of risk when you look at that kind of deal as well. Now, like I said, in the case of Chychrun, essentially, you get a real good, young, solid defenseman, and if by improving your blue line, it allows you the ability to trade Jake Muzzin. So obviously there's been some talk about Muzzin being moved, but then you lose some of the things, like he's obviously older, but he's also gives you that physical edge, and that, you can be replaced with Chychrun. Now, not to say that trading Muzzin is going to be easy. He does have some trade protection in his contract. Not to say that it's going to be impossible, but it might be challenging to get him moved. But if you trade Muzzin and you bring in Chychrun, you get the physicality that Muzzin brings, but a whole bunch more offense, and you get him way younger and cheaper. And now, in the case 2, this article also says that they should trade Justin Hall to the San Jose Sharks for a 4th or 5th round draft pick. So let's assume that Hall gets traded for a pick. Okay, you trade Muzzin separately somehow as well, because you can afford to. You get back you probably want to target some kind of future asset, whether it be prospects or picks and that kind of trade too. And then, of course, if you did this trade, you're involving Liljegren. So you have 3 blue liners of this year's decor gone between Muzzin, Liljegren, and Hall. Okay, but now you bring in Chychrun. So now you also have money. By trading Hall, you have money to re-sign Lyubushkin. Okay, because he's a free agent. He made 1.3 last year. Let's just assume he wants closer to $2 million. Okay, Rasmus Sandin also needs a new contract. It was rumored that him and Liljegren probably looking at contracts $1.5 to $2 million for a couple of years. So let's just give them all $2 million. Like if you look at, you could go with Riley and Chychrun as your top pair. Then you can go Giordano, who just signed a hometown discount deal with Brody. Those 2 guys used to play together in Calgary. They know each other well. And then you could go with Lyubushkin and Sandin. It allows Sandin to be a little bit more offensive when he's out there, because Lyubushkin's more the physical stay-at-home guy. So you've got Lyubushkin and Chychrun that are known for being physical. You know that Brody and Gio can provide some physicality too. So it gives you good size in the blue line. It gives you good puck moving. It gives you good offense. And it gives you good defense. Like overall, that's pretty good. Now, at this point, you've depleted your blue line a little bit. You don't really have a number 7 there. You probably have to find a free agent or somebody who you can add there as a cheaper number 7 option. They do have some other prospects that can start to kind of move their way up the pipeline here as well. But and the problem is, I guess, is in the forward group is at this point you would assume that Lawson Crouse is going to be a little bit less productive than William Nylander. but he's going to give you a different element and give you a whole different look in your top 6. And then with the money you're going to save, you can then maybe add another piece and add to your forward depth and maybe spread some money around a little bit better. Because like I said, with Nylander going, and let's say if you keep Liljegren, pay him $2 million, okay, well, there's about almost $9 million going out the door via trade. And let's say I'm not sure what Cross is going to cost, but he's not going to cost you $5 million. Let's say he gets, I don't know, maybe he gets $4 million, for example. So then $4 million, and Chychrun's 4.6. Like, you're saving money on the cap, but you're getting with a whole different look. Your blue line's going to be a little cheaper, but to me, it's a lot more, it's more physical and a little bit more offensive as well. And then keep in mind, like I said, your haul money that you're trading out to the San Jose Sharks, you can use that to give that money to keep Lyubushkin. So by acquiring Chychrun, you can afford to move Muzzin. By trading Hall, you can keep Lyubushkin. So you get a little bit of a different look there. So to me, I like the defensive aspect, and I like how the blue line would look by doing this trade. My concern would be, is are you taking too much away from the offense? Like, I know Lawson Crouse can produce, but there is a difference between what you get from William Nylander versus what you get in Lawson Crouse. But I think you can save enough money here by everything I just said that you can maybe add an extra player in the mix here in your top 6. And of course, at this point, you still have like guys like Matthew Nyes, you still have Nick Robertson. You haven't moved any of those guys yet. So you can put one of them, hopefully can slot into maybe a top 6 as well with Tavares and the newly acquired Lawson Crouse. That could possibly work. Or you still have Alex Kerfoot. You can either put Kerfoot on the third line, or he can play wing with Tavares. He's been a relatively good, productive player too, right? So that certainly makes things work. You still have guys like Engvall, David Kampf. Kampf's been a good find. That kind of comprises your third line. You still have some physicality under contract that you can use on the fourth line. But as we can see, the difference between the Leafs and the Lightning was that will. The Lightning willed themselves to victory. And there's just so many times where William Nylander doesn't show that. So again, if the Leafs are going to make a significant trade, and if they are going to do what Elliot Friedman called a Kawhi-type move by trading an important piece that's a popular player, all signs point to that being William Nylander. Now, it doesn't mean that trade's going to happen. It may not. But if it does, I would suggest he's likely going to be the guy that's involved. With all that said, though, I do like aspects of this trade. I am not entirely convinced if I'm Toronto that I would pull the trigger, though. As much as William Nylander can be that player that you love and at the same time drive you crazy, I don't know that you're going to be strong enough offensively here when it's all said and done. So I would tread carefully in this kind of trade. My other concern here is that the Jakob Chychrun contract is really good, but he also has missed a lot of time due to injuries. He does tend to get hurt, and that would be concerning for me as well. I do think that they're on the right path. I'm just not 100% sold that the Leafs should do this kind of trade, but I do kind of like parts of it. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Should the Maple Leafs consider this kind of trade? If not, would you tweak it and maybe change pieces of it? Or would you suggest something completely different? Let me know what your mock trades or your thoughts are down in the comments. We can discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.